Hi, and welcome to Honey Should We Homeschool.
We're your hosts, Leah
And Tom.
the proud parents of a little boy and a baby girl, and we're currently asking the question, honey, should we homeschool?
We're inviting you to join us on an exploration into education with the ultimate goal of figuring out what is right for our children.
We'll be interviewing people who currently work in the schooling system, home educators and students of both paths, as well as doing research into some of the hot topics such as socialisation, bullying, higher education and exams.
We'd love to hear your thoughts. You can find us on Instagram at Honey Should We Homeschool.
Thanks for being here.
Hello and welcome to Honey Should We Homeschool. Today we are going to be chatting with Poppy. Hi Poppy.
Hello.
Hey. So I found Poppy. Well, actually, my mum found you. So my mum sent me one of your little reels from Instagram, which was about glue in a tub and and a sponge and glue. And I had a look through all your videos, not all of them, a lot of them. And the one that made me really want to talk to you is the one, and I'll read it. It said, "If you ask me why I'm a teacher, I'd say it's all I've ever really wanted to do. I can't imagine doing anything else. But if you ask me on a deeper level, I'd say my childhood was filled with magic created by my parents and teachers. I see the magic and imagination disappearing. I am bringing back teacher magic." And I loved it. And I was like, right, I want to talk to you.
Like, you even reading that makes me tear up a little bit, which is ridiculous. Because anyone that knows me in real life knows I'm not like a cryy person at all. Like, I'm hard as nails. But hearing someone else read that makes me go, oh my gosh.
And how long have you been teaching?
So I have been in the education sector, I think would be the phrase, for about 11 years.
And you still have that love, and that's incredible.
Yeah, I just love being in the classroom. It's a bit icky. I don't think there's many teachers out there in the public eye that say they love it anymore. Like, I think it's very common to hear that teachers are struggling, which a lot of us are. I'm not being funny. I have days that aren't perfect, but compared to colleagues in other places, I can't really complain at all.
So I guess for a full rounded, what do you do? What area of school are you teaching in at the moment? What year groups?
So I'm currently a reception teacher. So that means I teach the first year of formal schooling in the UK. I'm in Bedford. So that's about an hour up the M1 from London or down the M1 from Birmingham. And yeah, they're 4 or 5. I'm like the first person that teaches them to fall in love with school when they walk through my door. And yeah, I look after other people's babies when they're big babies.
That's such a sweet way of putting it. And also, thank you for the clarification of where Bedford is. I wouldn't have known.
It's fine. No one does.
So because I really enjoy asking this to everybody we chat to, how was your experience of school when you were a kid?
It was a mixed bag. Like, when I really think about it, it was a mixed bag. Not because of the teachers or the school, but because of like peers. So I loved school. I can really, really remember not specific details, but the feeling of loving school when I started school. I have really good close friends, but my mum will famously remind me that I got to year 2. So that would have been like my 3rd year in school. And I didn't get along with the teacher. We clashed for whatever reason it was. And it wasn't because I was misbehaving. It just, we didn't work. Our personalities didn't gel. And she said I think the phrase would be went through hell getting me into school. And she does bring it up every now and again. I wasn't particularly the best behaved child at home, but I was a reasonably well behaved child at school. I was very fiery. So that could have been a touching point for that teacher, who knows? But my schooling in general, I absolutely loved. Like, the memories I have of it, the teachers were spot on. Like, I can remember getting told off as well and thinking now, actually, I'm like, I was lucky, actually. I could have got in more trouble than I did. But I had a few bullying issues with peers, but like I said, I'm a bit of a tough cookie. So I possibly didn't show it to the extent that maybe teachers needed to see it to help deal with it more. But overall, I absolutely loved it. Like, yeah, I just enjoyed it. The fun bits were fun. And as I got older, went through secondary, I have really good friendships. I never minded going to school any more than anyone else getting out of bed on a cold September morning did. So yeah, sorry, I'm one of them.
It sounds like you had some really good, well, you said you had some really good teachers. Do you think that helped shape it early on?
Big time. So I, as a primary school teacher, have probably one particular teacher I really, really remember and hold, like, her attitude to life in the classroom, I hold dear. And obviously that's my perspective from a child. My mum knew her quite well by chance, and I've had other bits fitted in, and I'm like, yes, I'm her. But to the point where certain Christmas songs, when you get to the Christmas time, whether I'm in school or in the middle of Tesco's, like, just fill me with such warmth and fuzziness, because I remember her and how she affected essentially my childhood, not even like my schooling. And I'm also that person that if someone can play Cauliflower's Fluffy on a piano, I'm a mess. I'm bawling my eyes out before like 9:30 because the children are singing Cauliflower's Fluffy in an assembly. And it just makes me feel so, not even happy, just like life will be okay because they still sing this song.
I don't know this song. I need to look it up now.
It was an assembly song talking about vegetables. It's really not that profound, but it just makes me feel like life will be okay because children still know the words to it. So I think it's a feeling I get opposed to specific memories. So yeah, and I was very lucky. I never changed school. So I was in an infants junior setup when I went to school, and then into a secondary school. So I moved like from the infants of the primary school over to the junior of the same primary school, and then went to a secondary school that was a feeder with the most of the children I knew. So I didn't, I wasn't part of the 3-tier system with a middle school, lower school, and upper. I kind of just went straight through, and it was all pretty smooth sailing.
So what got you into teaching?
My dance teacher. So I originally, when I was 14, I basically got asked to come and assist an after-school dance class. So I've been dancing since a very young age, and I finally got asked as one of the older ones at that dance kind of site, because there was more than one. I got asked to go and assist with the babies, and that was like huge. And I walked out of that dance class assisting those babies at the age of 14 and went, I'm going to be a teacher. And that was it. I thought I was going to be a secondary dance teacher because I was in secondary school at the time. I had a dance teacher in school. I absolutely loved being in performing arts and dance lessons in school. And that was it. And I was going to be a teacher. And that was it. I just knew. So I'm sorry that I don't have a more profound, like, amazing.
No, I think that's pretty profound.
Yeah.
And it's where I struggle with people say teaching's a vocation, which when people use the word vocation, it quite often kind of tries to take away the monetary value of it. Like, it's my job. I get paid to show up. Like, I'm not doing it for free. And it also kind of almost downplays the fact that I'm owed a weekend or a life. Like, I'm not supposed to be there till God knows what time of night each day. But I feel like I'm one of those vocational people. And it makes me feel a bit even when I say it, because like there's more to a person than that. But like a big part of me is I like to teach.
I think that comes across in your content on your in your Instagram channel. Definitely looks that way, and you were really excited about this one. And this is quite an interesting one for us because, as you know, our podcast is about whether homeschooling is a good option for people. And from the perspective of looking at the positives of homeschooling, we also think it's really important to look at the positives of schooling and the people out there like yourself who are so passionate about it and do think that there's a really good opportunity for people in school. So it's been this is a really interesting one for us.
Yeah.
Aww. Like, I think people that homeschool, like, hats off to you, because if I went to a different year group, I'd have to not completely learn everything, but I'd be under that pressure to know it to the extent I'm comfortable to then be able to teach it. So I teach Diddy ones now. If I went, I could potentially get told to go and teach year 11, not year 11, 11-year-olds next year. I'd have to learn all sorts of things again. So people that homeschool, I'm just like, whoa, yeah, go for it. Like, I don't know if it's brave or what, but
Stupid.
I don't. No, definitely not stupid, but definitely brave and some.
I think the thing with us, and probably most homeschoolers, is that we don't feel like we have to know everything because we're not like teaching them. We're kind of coaching and helping them to find out the information. So we kind of get to learn alongside them rather than learn it to teach them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't thought of it like that.
But we get that kind of privilege, I guess. We don't have to be that person who knows everything and has to tell them. Like, we
Yeah.
can just be the coach.
And disappear off and Google things or whatever it might be to...
Yeah, without having this big screen that the kids can all see when you don't actually know the answer. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's not, it's a one to few ratio as well, as opposed to a one to many. So there are many different opportunities that it gives you. But yeah, I think I can't imagine the reaction. It's like if you go to the doctor and you say something and they turn around and Google the symptoms and you're like,
see them do it.
yeah.
Yeah.
You're like, I could do that at home.
Yeah, the ribbing you'd probably get from a group of teenagers if you did that in a
Yeah.
GCSE level class.
That's why I teach the little ones.
So that's a rough frame as to what you do, and it's really nice to hear sort of why you got into teaching. You say it's not a profound reason. I think it's a really lovely reason, actually, that you were that inspired by the experience you had that was given to you by one of your teachers at the time. There's no
It's lovely.
better way to be inspired to do something than by seeing the positive effect that it has on people.
Yeah. Now, on to the questions about school. So we recently did a chat. We had a chat with someone who left teaching to homeschool their own child. And she was telling us about the screen time in their school and how if it was wet outside, they would be inside and they would just be on iPads, and they all had an iPad. And if they finished their work, they're on iPads, and everything was really screen based. So I'm wondering how much screen time you guys do at your school.
So it will be drastically different because I'm in early years. So quite often we don't really use screens. So we do have a screen on the wall. It's connected to my computer. It's also connected to like a visualizer camera, because when there's 34-year-olds and you're trying to show them counters or pom-poms in a dish, you'll drop them on them. So I put a lot of... You do. I literally did it today because I was like, I can't bother to turn it all on because it's going to be quicker to show you directly. But there went all the pom-poms, and that was the chaos of 30 children trying to give their teacher their pom-poms back because... Yeah. So we use a screen probably, I'd say definitely for about an hour a day in total, because we use it to demonstrate activities, to teach, because pom-poms, counters, like trying to glue things vertically, just many things that if you could do it under a picture and they can see it bigger, it's far more beneficial to the one that got the lucky spot at the back corner of the carpet. So there's that. We do occasionally, like if it is wet break, and quite often our lovely little reception guys somehow have the perfect lunch break compared to everyone else, where it's dry for probably 25 minutes of their playground time and then it chucks it down out of nowhere. So the classroom set up, it's ready to go, and there's only one adult in there, which is legal ratio wise, but a little bit chaos when they are that excited coming off the playground, that drenched. So they will put something on. I'm quite fortunate that my TA always goes for come outside, Pippin, Auntie Mabel, good old like 90s, early noughties, educational BBC stuff. So at least there's something worth getting out of it.
God, 90s BBC stuff. I'd probably remember some of that.
Come on, Spotty Aeroplane, Little Dog, went to like a crisp factory.
Yeah.
Yes, and the kids love it still. And because it's got a lower frame per second film time, it's less addictive and stimulating in a weird way as to cartoons today. So if you turn it off, there's none of this, oh, but you've turned it off. It's to do with the way it stimulates the child's brain. It's got a lower frame rate. Very interesting.
Yeah, we did a bit of research on that a while ago. There's a I can't remember what the website
like
is.
digital detox for your kids. So it had like certain cartoons that
Yeah.
were sort of like less colourful and less, I guess, like you're saying. So
Yeah.
things like Give a Mouse a Cookie. Oh, I can't even remember them. Even Bluey was on there.
Yeah.
But it was along the same similar lines of what is less stimulating for kids and stops them throwing a tantrum when you say, right, time to turn the TV off or whatever
Yeah.
it is. And it's also worth mentioning that we've done some research on different types of screen time. So not all screen time is equal.
Definitely not. I listened to an amazing talk at an education technology conference in January. Abid Patel was on the panel, and there was 2 others, and one of them was like a child psychologist. I can't remember her name for the life of me. And it was really interesting because she said screen time, like even walking in the street, you're probably observing a screen somewhere, whether it's an electronic billboard or like a TV through someone's window. That's screen time, but it's passive. So yes, you can count that towards your hours, your minutes of the day, but it's not doing anything for you. Whereas when you get as far as active screen time, and what was the other one? Active screen time, there was another one. And it's basically a case of, is it productive? So active would be like scrolling on Instagram. So you're getting a little bit out of it, but purely for enjoyment, but it's not really doing anything for you. And you might type a comment because you're interacting with it, but it's not giving your brain anything. It's not giving you any real proper benefit that you could measure. Whereas the next level is things like we do use apps in school, not my year group, but other year groups will use an app in school to help their fluency in maths. Because you could then tailor it so every child is at the level they need, and they could get an iPad or similar out for 10 minutes and do an activity which could have been done on paper, but there's arguments around eco-friendliness there, wasting paper, wasting ink, electronic kind of producing it, and also workload on the teacher, happier children, and the fact that it could be tailored a lot easier to the kids. So we don't have a huge amount of screen time in early years due to the way early years works and the continuous provision side of it. But as a massive EdTech advocate, I really admire schools that have gone towards a device per child when they are used in a productive way and the children have been taught to use them in a productive way. Because essentially when they go to secondary school or when they go to work, they're going to be using screens for the majority of their life after that. Like we're using a screen now, we use a screen to send emails. It's something that, as long as it's not passive all the time, or it shouldn't be passive in school at least, I think it's not a bad thing as such. Like, yeah, shoving on a cartoon, not really beneficial. But the end of term, you've all gained, I don't know, what you ever have, your school sorts out their class treats. Yeah, you've all voted to watch Scooby-Doo. Fabulous. You voted to watch it. It's not going to damage you like entirely for that one go. Crack on. But I think it is a lot about how it's being used.
Yeah, I'm not even sure we could have done this. We don't done this interview without a screen because we don't have a landline, and doing this by fax would have been quite hard.
we don't have landline either, so
yeah,
virtually impossible.
So I guess that's quite.
Sorry, that was really in depth.
No, that's fine. It's really interesting to know. And I guess that lower screen time gives you more opportunities for other things in the classroom. But how much time do you get for unstructured play?
When you say unstructured play, do you mean their free flow, choosing what is around them or accessing what's been set up, or literally unstructured hands off its playtime? Because our children learn through play in early years. So what one person might refer to as unstructured play, I might not. And I know before I was in reception, I just thought it was mayhem and play, and I didn't understand how it worked at all. Like, it terrified me, having taught the older ones. Whereas now I look around the room and I'm like, they're playing, but they are learning through their play because we've put things out to encourage a direction. It's not forcing a direction, but it's an encouraging one. So
yeah, I think that's what I meant. Like, they're not being told to sit down and fill in a worksheet.
no.
You know, you might set up like a table with some Play-Doh, but it's not like, right, you all have to come and play with Play-Doh now. It's just there. It's a provision.
If they could play with Play-Doh all day, they would literally just, I'd have 30 of them sat down playing with Play-Doh. Like, yeah. If I can make that much Play-Doh and keep it fresh, they would love me. They would love me forever. They'd probably try and come home with me. So we have, and I worked it out, we have an hour and a half, 100%. It's sometimes more than that in the morning. That allows for us to read a story, get the legal bits like a register done, make sure, everyone that's supposed to have their lunch ordered, all those kind of keep the children alive bits and accounted for done. And sometimes it's quicker and sometimes it's not. That plus a story of a little input, they get about an hour and a half afterwards, because we do phonics after that. In the afternoon, they get about 2 to 2.5 hours. Again, depending on if we've managed to get them all off. We do always get them off the playground, but one's not slipped in the toilet without making it very obvious, because there's 120 of them coming in from the playground and all of that sort of thing. But they do get a good chunk. And then on top of that, they get a minimum of half an hour on the playground as part of their lunchtime.
How many in your class?
In my class, I currently have 31. Anyone that knows early years will be shouting at the podcast saying, she's legally only allowed 30. The council had asked us to take a special place. Not a special place, but they'd looked at where this child lived. They needed to be in school. All of our classes in reception had 30. And I was the lucky one that got pulled out the hat to have an extra. So yes, it's technically over ratio, but we have the right adults to accompany it. And our local authority said, you need one more. We need to get this child an education. Parents want them in school. You're the school to have them.
Yeah, I'm sure we looked that up before, actually, about how many kids you were allowed. But it does say, I'm sure it's up to 34, actually, if is necessary.
Yeah, so in like Key Stage 1, that's far more common. So that's year 1 and 2. In early years, it's normally because of the age of them, and they come in at age 4. It is usually a little bit stricter. But it can, like you said, it goes up to like a 10% leeway, so like 33, 34. So, but it's very rare to get over the 30 mark in a reception class because of how young they start.
So I guess in line with that, how much time do the kids get? You've already talked a bit about the outdoor time, but how much time do they get for outdoor play? And I guess I don't know what physical education means at that age, because kids move. They just do.
They move.
Yeah.
Oh, they move. So it's a little bit weather dependent. Now, I'm one of those people that's like, the weather's fine, just put proper clothes on, or the right clothes. But our school has a uniform, which is, to be fair, pretty relaxed. It's like a polo shirt, trousers, as long as they're not logoed, and grey or black. And they're allowed to wear non-logoed leggings. They're allowed to wear non-logoed, like smart tracksuits, and a jumper. So it's not exactly, school trousers, school shirt, tie sort of thing. It is essentially a glorified tracksuit.
Is that for the whole school, or is that just for the reception?
It is more or less for the whole school. They do encourage more of a school style trouser as they go further up. And I think actually the children kind of prefer it. You'll notice not even many of the boys will be opting for that as they get older. But I wonder if that's a case of they don't feel it fits the style of a white polo shirt and a school jumper. And the school jumper is literally a sweatshirt with the logo on. Like, it's not a jumper. And it doesn't even have to have the logo, to be fair. It's just got to be a blue jumper with either the school logo or no logo. You'll notice as they go up the school, they kind of tend not to choose to wear the leggings, the girls, and the boys tend to choose not to wear the tracksuits. But that's probably not a bad thing, because otherwise they get a bit of a shock come secondary school. But yeah, in terms of outside time, if it is absolutely chucking it down, or it's freezing cold, unless those two things are happening, or it's like horrifically windy, like to the point where we have a lot of trees on our site, and the trees themselves are stable, but some are younger than others, therefore some of their limbs are a little bit thinner and could break easier. Unless we think there's an actual reason they shouldn't be outside, or sometimes they come in plimsolls and for whatever reason we can't find a pair of wellies that fit them. We can't make an adjustment to their attire. They can be outside from the moment we finish story time or input time on the carpet till the moment we tidy up.
Oh,
That's amazing.
It's their choice where they split their time, and we will free flow. Although earlier in the year, whilst we're still getting them used to the environment and routines, we do kind of send them out in set groups so they all get equal time. But so we all know exactly where they are when we're still working out who's called what. Because those first couple of weeks, when two children that look very much the same sit together because they're best friends from nursery and you've swapped their names over by accident, you need to know where they are so you can get their names the right way around and locked in for the rest of the year. So once they're in a good routine, they understand the rules and like things like safety, they've got that free flow kind of freedom. And sometimes we will choose that half the class will go out in the morning and then we'll swap them over, just depending on what the tasks and activities are. But they can choose to be outside for as long as they want.
That's great. The next question we had actually was around socialization, which I think is from what you're saying, they get the entire day apart from registration to socialize and chat and play with their friends and stuff like that. So it might be more of a question for your experience with the older years.
So going up through the school, it's really different, and it varies as well between every school. I know schools that do a continuous provision model all the way up to year 2. I know schools that are very formal from the moment they go into year 1. And my own personal opinion is that terrifies me because they've been allowed to play and now they're starting school, like starting formal school, and it's a shock to the system. The poor little things aren't ready for it. But that's my own personal opinion. So as they go up, it does get more formal. Depending on the teacher, I was always happier with a small buzz through the classroom because silence, when there's 30 children roughly and 2 adults, if it is silent, there's a problem. Like, it puts me on edge. I had a class once that they just didn't talk to each other and it literally petrified me. I used to have to put music on, and I used to put music on before they even went into silence because I knew it was coming, and it used to really freak me out. But yeah, it's down to each teacher. I was always happier with a little bit of chat. And even if they're talking about the work, they're still socialising in the fact that they're choosing who they talk to. Even if they're sat on a table of 5 that I've kind of arranged them in so they don't completely, end up not doing anything, and then they're going to have to catch up at some point, or they just don't understand the concept, ready for the next step of learning. They're choosing which person they're talking to on that table. They're choosing who they ask for help. They're choosing who they kick under the table, who lends them the pencil. It's all of that. And I think it's not stereotypical socialization, but it's all those social choices. And you may be forcing them to sit on a certain table, or am I expanding their friendship choices? Because I've separated them from best friend. But when best friend's off, they're 8 years old and they don't know what to do because best friend that is there every single day stuck to them like glue, and all of a sudden best friend's gone and they don't know what to do because they're off sick. And I've seen it happen so many times. So they do get to socialise at lunchtimes and playtimes. Most schools have 50-minute break time in the morning, an hour or so for lunch. It's very rarely under an hour. Sometimes it is more than an hour, kind of midday. And then like I said, I like them to chat, and I see that as a bit of socialisation, even if they're talking about the work, but it is down to each teacher's preference on how they run their classroom and things like that. And it's like, I would always have a movement break in the afternoon and when I say a movement break, we'd literally get up, I'd put Just Dance on the screen, and we'd all do Just Dance together. And that was me included, because if I was, sat down with a group, I needed to move as much as them. But then sometimes it would be, right, turn to the person next to you, tell them what your favourite thing you did at the weekend was. So it's all variable, and I think it's very much on that teacher in that room. It's not even necessarily on what school you're at. It's that teacher's approach in their classroom and how they run it. I know not many teachers like me would put Just Dance on and then me, so I don't stick my arm out and smack a child in the face by accident. You don't want to do that. Stand at the back and join in. Some teachers might put it on and just carry on marking, but I used to do it because I knew I needed that, regardless of whether it made me a better teacher like 10 minutes later, or whether it meant I had to run around the room handing books out. I was more awake, because you don't want the kids half asleep. You don't want yourself to be half asleep. So maybe I'm selfish like that, but we enjoyed an afternoon movement break. We needed it.
Mutually beneficial.
Exactly.
It's really interesting, and thank you very much. I think it is a good answer. If it's highly dependent on a teacher, it makes a lot of sense. But I think the reason we asked that question, and specifically in relation to schooling and homeschooling, is You would not believe the amount of people that ask that question if you say you're considering homeschooling. Oh, how do you know they're going to get enough socialization? And there are very few studies anywhere that say a child must have X amount of hours of socialization a day.
Yeah.
So we're always curious, actually, at school, there's, especially as you get older, as you said, it does become a bit more formal. So those opportunities do slim down a bit as the kids get older compared to kind of preschool. So it's just really interesting to know that actually a lot of it is on the teacher.
Well, it makes sense. Like everyone's going to do their job slightly differently, aren't they?
Yeah. And I think it's down to the way you've trained or the era you came into teaching, your past experiences.
Your personality.
There's so much that goes into it. Yeah, personality, whether you can sit still or not.
Me? No.
Yeah, no, me neither.
Can I ask you about the curriculum?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, what do you think of the curriculum? So not just the reception one, but like the whole curriculum. Good, bad, what, like...
I will confess I'm not an expert on the whole curriculum. I wouldn't even say I was an expert on the early years curriculum. I know what I need them to do, but I would still, I'd still double check wording, things like that. I personally believe it needs, I'm not saying it needs to be scrapped at all. We need something that guides us as teachers. We need something to give us direction. We need a curriculum. I also think it could be written in possibly better consultation with teachers. Some teachers would say it's too broad and vague. Some people would go, it's broad and vague, and that's an advantage. So in my school, we'll teach local history, but it's not said to me, you teach, I don't know, the local history of Blackpool. Well, that's not relevant to my children. So the fact that it's vague helps in some ways, and the fact that it's not necessarily being consulted by people that are physically on the ground in the classroom constantly. I find it a hard question in the sense that there's things that I think, why are we teaching them that? But am I thinking that because I didn't learn it at that age? And I can remember little bits that I learned at certain ages. Like, there is no way I could have possibly left reception as a child at age 5, being able to write a sentence on my own with a full stop, capital letter and finger spaces, as well as some of my kids do. No way. But at the same time, I'm fully aware I was a far more achieved reader than our year 3s are. Because I can remember what I was reading at their age, and it blows my mind that they can't read that. But there's lots of different factors around that. So I think the speed of the curriculum could be questioned. It's a tricky one. I don't hate it because it needs to exist. I do think when I read parts of it, I go, you what? Pardon? Really? Are we okay? That's fine. It's my job to do it. We'll do that. But I definitely, and I don't know if it's because I teach the younger ones and have done for quite a while now, but if I go and speak to the year 6 teachers, I'm like, why are they doing this? Like, why have we moved so far forward that they're doing stuff that I wasn't doing till almost GCSE? But I don't know if that's just evolution, because obviously they must be able to do that now. And when I say evolution, I don't know if that's us as humans or the education system, or I don't know. It's a weird beast, and I feel that there should have been some sort of mass survey that if you had a teacher number, you should have been able to give your input. But then I wasn't a teacher when it was written, so I wouldn't have got any input anyway. But it's bizarre. I know you read it, and hats off to you if you read it all, because I've only ever read the bits I've needed for the year group I've taught, because
I didn't completely finish it. Like, I didn't read the secondary one at all because that's in a distant future. But I really struggled with the polarity of, it's so broad and vague with some of the subjects like history, which I do think is a good thing because it does mean you can sort of customize it a bit. And then it was so like, by the time they finished year 1 or whatever, they must know these exact 40 sounds, and it's like, really? Like, is that, do they really need to?
I don't know. I can't. In terms of the phonics, I wouldn't say I'm a phonics connoisseur, but I know my phonics because that's literally what your life is as a reception teacher and then a year 1 teacher, and I've been both, or I am both. I am a reception teacher and I have been a year one teacher. There we go. I don't remember how I learned to read. If you think about it as an adult, you don't remember learning to read. Normally, you remember reading.
Yeah, no, I don't either.
But it's like I was saying, I can remember what I read at year 3. So 5, 6, so that would have been age 8. And I read the first 3 Harry Potter books. And obviously there was massive hype around it at the time. So I very much remember reading them. But children now, depending on their background and lots of other factors, but children in our school, no, they wouldn't be reading those. The odd one or two. Is it because as a society, we're not seen with a book as much? I don't know. So is it a case of they've had to move the curriculum to be this prescriptive to ensure people can physically read? Not long ago, me and my colleagues had a conversation at lunchtime about the fact that we couldn't remember how we read. We were literally Googling like which bit of time we were in and how we were taught, because phonics was a thing and then phonics wasn't a thing and then phonics was a thing again. And we were trying to work out where we fitted. I wonder if there's a little bit of that in there as well, because I remember growing up, my mum would have been reading a book. Not an iPad, not a Kindle, she'd have been reading a book. My dad would have been reading. My big sister would have been reading. My brother would have had a comic. He wouldn't have been reading, but he would have had a Beano comic. So there's people sat around in their spaces at home with words in front of them. So what was I going to do? I was going to read. Whereas now we've got other stuff in front of us. All right, I had a TV at home and we had a computer, but I'm not saying, a TV stops you reading, but we have other ways of reading. Like we can read on a Kindle, but unless the child can see the actual screen at the time, they don't know if you're reading or if you're scrolling social media on an iPad. I think it's different. I think for the phonics at least, there is like a very much a different level of reading in some areas, which is why I think it has become that prescriptive. But yeah, the curriculum is a one to read. I wouldn't recommend it for bedtime reading or any joyful reading. Like if you're a teacher or home ed and just read what you need at the time and just put it back on the coffee table.
That does remind me that you did send me a link to like a kind of summarized version.
Yes.
Can I share that with everyone?
I think it's primarycurriculum.me. It might have changed, but it literally saved my life because it summarised it. And I wouldn't have managed to get my head round it as an NQT, which is a first year teacher, without it, because it was just so much text and so much wording. And I just needed it written out like I was a 5-year-old. Because that was all the brain power I had.
It is good they do that. I remember doing English literature at school, and we had to read books like Far from the Madding Crowd. And I remember being so painfully uninspired to read this book that was about nothing that I was even vaguely interested in at the time. I know it is
I was like that with Wuthering Heights.
Yes, that was another one.
I did every film and TV adaptation going just to avoid reading it.
Well, they had the shortened versions of those as well that you could get, like a summary version.
Yeah.
I don't remember reading anything like that in school, but I read Jane Eyre quite recently and I was shocked at how few of the words I knew. I was constantly like, what the hell are they talking about?
Yeah.
So we've got a couple more questions about school, and then we are going to ask you about your thoughts on homeschool.
Okay.
And then a few about your own thoughts about how things could be improved or things that could be shared more. But I guess in line with the curriculum one, in summary, it tries to be a one-size-fits-all document that is quite hard to digest. And from your perspective, from what you've said, just look up the bits you need at that particular point in time.
That is literally what I do as a professional. And I don't know if that... Professional, wow. You know what I mean? Like, professional. Oh, yeah, I get paid to do my job. Yeah, I do not have the brain space to read bits I don't need. And essentially, I don't know if it's a me thing, I will forget the stuff that doesn't stick. So read the bit you need. If you don't understand it, find one of the abridged or narrowed down or simplified versions and go with it, because it still means the same thing. You're still working towards the same goal. Just don't stress over it. It's a horrible document to read when you're doing your planning, the coffee's gone cold and it's hot it's late at night, or it's 10 minutes till the end of your PPA, which is your planning preparation time out of the classroom as a teacher. So unless your coffee's hot, you've got a silent room and nothing better to do in the whole entire world, don't read all of it, ever.
No, that's good advice. I guess it's kind of related to the next thing we wanted to ask, which is, as a teacher, what do you think the biggest challenges you face today are?
I don't know. I think there's a new level of, or a different style of special educational needs coming through that it depends on your school. I'm very fortunate. We have 3 provisions in our school. I can literally go to the classroom next door, which is actually closer to me if I was stood in my classroom doorway than it is to go to my kitchen right now. I could literally stick my head in and go, I have a child. This is the information I have. Please help me. And there are specialist SEND teachers that can help me. If I didn't have that, I'd be relying on my own research. I'd be relying on going to usually one member of staff in the school that is a specialist at it, that may not have experienced that level of, or that style of need before. So they'd be in the same boat as you. I think I've not done teacher training since I did teacher training like 8 years ago. But if it's anything like it was, which I guess it probably is still very similar, there needs to be some sort of more training around special educational needs, because it's getting more common in the mainstream with different needs. And I don't think teachers on the ground are always brilliantly prepared. Not because they don't want to be, but because that's another thing on top of the pile that you need to do. And you're battling in your brain, doing the best thing for that child and then sorting out the other 29 and how do you balance it? And it sounds terrible, but I remind people that if I was working in an office and these 29 people were my employees under me that I was managing, I would be told to prioritize them and not this one. And it sounds terrible, and I don't do that because they're children, it's not their fault. But your brain struggles with that sometimes. And if you weren't working with children, you wouldn't sound such a bad person saying it.
No, I think it's really hard, and I completely understand. If you've got 30 children, you can't give the entirety of your time to focusing on one of them. You simply can't do that.
Yeah, it's an internal and moral battle, big time. And like I said, if you weren't talking about children, if you were talking about adults, which still doesn't make it sound any better that I was being horrible to, or not paying as much attention to a special need person or person with a disability. But if you had to work out in an office, like I said, like who you prioritize or what group of people you prioritize, you wouldn't be kind of shamed or thought any less of if you're prioritizing the majority. So I think we need more training. We need the government to put something in to help schools train us more, or councils or local authorities, because I think it's coming through more. And I think there's more and more teachers, especially teachers that have less experience, whether that's quantity of years teaching or whether that's experience with special needs, because you could be the sort of person that's gone through a school and done like 10 years and you've never had this sort of special need come up to you before, and you're still in the dark because you've never experienced it. But I definitely think that's a big thing across year groups.
It is increasing a lot, I
Yeah.
think, from the statistics that we've read. And I don't know whether that's because we are more, as a society, sensitive to it and able to understand the different challenges that people face compared to years gone by. But I think, is it 1 in 5? Yeah, so the commonslibrary.parliament.uk says 1.7 million school pupils in England with identified SEN, which is 18% of all pupils. So it's about 1 in 5. And only 1.2 million receive SEN support.
So SEND support could be seen in lots of different ways. It depends how they're interpreting that. If they're interpreting that as an EHCP, being an educational healthcare plan, which could come with monetary funding, which would then probably fund an extra member of staff or provision.
That's 0.4 million. So
Oh,
they
right,
do
you've got that as
specify
a separate. All right, fair
Yeah.
enough. I was going to say, because a lot of people think an EHCP equals funding. And it doesn't always. It's all down to the specific needs of the child and whether an actual adult's going to help them.
Yeah, but that's a high, what you mentioned in terms of a challenge as an educator. That's a pretty high percentage of your class. I mean, that's 6. Hang on. Yeah, 1 in
Yeah.
5. Yeah, 6.
Yeah,
6 per class.
Yeah.
And you could, in theory, experience 6 different types per year group, every year group.
Yeah. Or more. Like I said, we've got 3 provision units in our school that are run by the school. They are run within the school grounds, on school property. We see them as our students. They are mixed age, and they are put into the 3 separate classes by need, ability, and that's like their basis. They're not done by age group. Because we've got those provisions, we do get more children with more special educational needs. They need specialist level of support and education. So, for example, we had, I think it was 3 leave recently because we've had a new special needs school open in the area. But that's 3 out of, there's got to be going on 30 between the 3 rooms, if not more. And that's just an example. And we do get those children because we have a reputation for being really good with our special educational needs offer. But at the same time, we could have just had those in mainstream because they're in our catchment. And it is a struggle. And I think it's a combination of lack of space in special educational needs schools, but also it's just, we're more accepting as a society, but we're not getting any more specialist training. But I wouldn't say that's the school's fault. I wouldn't say that was like my head teacher's fault for not organising it. We have to still do everything we were already doing. And I think there needs to be some sort of adaptation, maybe, or recommendation nationally by the government or similar around how we get extra training for it.
Yeah, you're doing all of that with the same funding. I think is one of the huge challenges, isn't it?
I'm not an expert on funding.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to pretend to be.
No, that's all right.
It's way above what
No worries.
If you could change anything about how schools are run, what would it be?
What you can't see is my other half's a PE teacher, and he heard that question as he walked in, and we work in 2 very different schools, and the grin on his face, like, I'll start this answer. And him shaking his head. What would I change if I could change anything about schools? I don't really know. He's really honest. Like I said, I'm sickeningly, I love the school I work in, so I think my view is very filtered because it's disgusting. I love my school. I have no intention on leaving. I don't even want to climb the management ladder because it means someone above me will leave. I think a big thing overall, we need to look at worthwhile workload. And I think it's a case of how much do we need to do this paperwork? Is it benefiting that child? If it's not benefiting that child, what is the purpose for it? I think we need to look at digital equality. I know we spoke about screen time, but I think the long-term thing is 90% of children have a screen at home that is theirs, if not a higher percentage. I've got children in my class and they talk about their mum bringing their phone after school. Why does a 4-year-old need a phone to walk home? They don't. They're being shown whatever on it on the bus or in the car, or just look out the window. But essentially, we need digital equality. So as they progress through their education, they're on par with the children in the private school, the children in a different area to them, the children that have their parents who can buy them the brand new iPad every time it comes out. But they need to be equipped with skills that they can use in both their education, but going forward as a human being. So they need to know the difference between reply all and reply. So that as digital equality. So digital equality, I think worthwhile workload and therefore teacher workload. I'm really fortunate. I don't work at home at all, unless I've really dropped the ball and spent too long talking to someone on PPA. But I do think a lot of teachers struggle with workload, and it is linked to the why of why we need it. But I think that'd be it: workload, digital equality, and there's probably loads of other things that, because it doesn't impact me, it doesn't occur to me.
Okay.
Thank you. So we're going to flip it a little bit now and ask you what your thoughts on home education are.
I think people that choose to home educate, I admire them. I've not done it. I don't have my own children. And because I enjoyed school so much, it probably wouldn't. And because I'm also a teacher, and so is my other half. And if we were to have children, no one would be there at home to educate them because we'd both be in schools. So I think I admire the choice of it. I think it's not the stereotypical what people expect choice still. I think most people still go, you apply for their school, like for 4, they go to school, they go to secondary school, college, etc. And I can understand why people do it. I don't understand. So maybe a question for you, and this is a long way off for you because this is going like secondary end. Initial employers still look for GCSEs. How are you guys how are home educators having the knowledge to get these children through GCSEs if they take them, or like A levels? Because my word, like the knowledge on some of those papers is insane. So how, do they still choose to take those exams, or do people opt out?
So we've done some research on this, and there are increasingly different options to get into employment. And we've done quite a bit of research on jobs that actually don't need GCSEs or A levels as well, just to kind of complete the picture.
Yeah.
But we've always talked about if our kids want to go and do something which requires a ridiculously high level of education, so be a doctor. It's like 7 years of university, and then prior to that you need the right A levels, and to be able to get into the A levels you need GCSEs. And we've talked a lot about it, and how that might happen. And I think the way that you can go about it, and this doesn't answer the education bit yet, I'll answer the kind of exam bit first, is you would do more what you would do as an adult if you were going back into education. So if you were going into late education, you would reverse engineer what you needed to be able to get onto that course.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't, so if you needed, say, for example, biology A level, and a certain grade in that, plus English, plus something else, to get into a university that required those, you'd focus on those. And then if you needed to do certain GCSEs to be able to get into a college to be able to do those A levels, if you wanted to go the college route, then you would pick those GCSEs. So you've got an opportunity to focus on 3 or 4 potentially, instead of 8 to 11. I think some schools do 11 or 12 even. So you would take that more reverse engineer approach to see what you need to do, so you don't need to generalize quite so much. And in doing that, it gives you the opportunity to either look up the information that you need and support them through it. But we've talked about this. If our little boy wanted to be a chemist, for example, there's no way that my chemistry knowledge is up to scratch to be able to mix everything off the periodic table, which I'm sure would cause an explosion if you actually did that. But that kind of thing. So there are tutors out there that you can get. Obviously that costs money, but there's some online resources as well where you're able to get, I can't remember the name of the site.
Like there's like the $2 tuition club. There's a lady on Instagram, she's called Theatre of Science, and she provides a whole, have you seen
I've
her?
seen it, yeah.
She, for free, delivers a whole GCSE level physics course. So there's a lot of things you can find online. And yeah, I think I would just find either a friend or someone who knew more than me, or find a tutor if nobody else knew.
Right.
Yeah, and I think the key for us is enabling and allowing the opportunity for learning. So whether that's with us and we can do it ourselves, or finding somebody that, if we're not capable of doing it, making sure that we find somebody that can, or a resource that can, or that opportunity to go and do it somewhere. Does that answer the question a little bit?
Yeah, it does.
If there are any other questions you want to ask us, please do, because we're still learning as we go through this, hence the reason for the podcast.
Yeah.
So what do you think are the advantages of school over home education?
And vice versa.
I don't know. There will be advantages on both depending on how you view it. I think that in school, I think a child has different experiences to they would at home in a home ed situation. I could be rightly or wrong with this. They're surrounded by a lot of other children a lot of the time. Depending on how many humans are in your home, they are probably having to learn to navigate, regulate, be like lots of other things they probably do, not probably, they will do at home with however many adults or children are at home with them, but they're doing it on a much larger scale. And I don't know, as a young child, that's, you know, necessarily needed, but definitely, you know, teenage to young adult age, I can see the benefits in being surrounded by that many people and being surrounded by kind of rules around safety and like school rules anyway, that kind of give an insight to when you eventually have a job, you know, people around you may not regulate the same as you. They may, you know, they may snap at you. They may not have a good day. It doesn't make it okay, but they're essentially a stranger to an extent, in the same way that there's 120 children in my year group. Child in my class and child in another class could more or less be strangers. But they're navigating each other on the playground, they're still having to do that. So in the same way, like an older teenager and young adult would have to navigate those other people in their class or in their environment, would mimic how they may have to navigate people in a workplace. So I think that's the first thing that comes to mind. But then they'd still be exposed to things like that in home ed if they're going like to groups and things like that. But there's pros and cons to both of it. I don't think there's anything either way that makes it a much better deal. You know, I work with people that have come back from maternity leave and said they're a better mum because they're at work and being an adult. Because as much as they love their child and being a mum, they need to be themselves as well. And they're a better mum for being themselves. So I think it's all perspective. I think it's all down to the individual adults and the individual children as to the advantages and disadvantages as well.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, you definitely felt that when you went back to work, actually being able to have adult conversations and do adult things and be not just about children for a bit.
Yeah. Right, I want to get on to the fun questions. So, how do you make learning magical and fun?
So I've got a thing that I call teacher magic. I don't know why I call it teacher magic, apart from the fact that it came out of my mouth one day to describe what was happening. First example of it would be, I ended up with a large amount of glow sticks. You know, snap, give them a shake, glow sticks. And because it's one of the magical things my brain does, it was firework night. And obviously you can't give 30 children sparklers indoors when they're 5. Even if you're outdoors, I wouldn't recommend it. So it got to the end of the day and we've been talking about fireworks night, and some people do it, some people don't, all of this. But what we did all agree is we'd all seen fireworks and we all liked them. So it was November, so naturally they went to get their home time things and they went to get their scarves and their hats and their gloves. So I made sure all the curtains were down because it's 3 o'clock, so there was still a bit of light. I got, and this is the bit where I confess that I'm a complete and utter Disney obsessive. So I got the Disneyland Paris fireworks up on the board. I got an indoor sparkler out for each one of them. And they had an indoor sparkler to play with whilst watching the fireworks, with their hats and scarves and coats on like they would if they were outside.
That's amazing.
Did it actually do anything for their learning? No. Do I have year 5s and year 6s? So that is children that are 9, 10, 11 come and talk to me about it still? Yes. And I think that falls into the same category as when I was in year 4 as a child, so that would have been age 9. I remember being stood against a wall and a teacher juggling tennis balls at the wall next to me. The reason I was chosen was because the teacher knew my mum and also knew if she accidentally hit me, my mum wouldn't sue. Not that she wanted to hit me, but I was a safe bet in case it went wrong. But it's moments like that there was no educational value, really. There was no reason for it. But magic happened. And it's teacher magic. And those are the things you remember as an adult. Those random things that aren't normal, that didn't happen every day, but they occur. And I probably do it throughout the year more than I realise. And I try to make an effort to, because it makes me a happier teacher. It makes me feel like I'm giving more than, or I'm giving what I want to them. and especially now I'm in reception, if I don't make those children fall in love with school at this point, it may never happen. So teacher magic can also be party rings over the straw of the milk on the last day of half term or term, because children at the age I've got them get a carton of milk a day anyway, and that party ring over the straw makes things like so much more magical and so much more special than just having milk at the end of the day. And they're the things that we remember as we get older. And that's what teacher magic is. It's things that they don't need to be taught, that have no educational value really, but it just makes the adults smile as much as the children in the room.
Okay.
So yeah.
I really like that. I imagine a 30 kids going home being like, I've seen the Disneyland Paris fireworks. Can we go to Disneyland? And all the parents being like, what have you done?
To be fair, lots of them didn't know what Disneyland was. They just thought it was a pretty castle with the fireworks. So that made me feel better about that whole situation after I realised what I'd done.
So it does
That
have
was important learning.
that is educational. Yeah, there's the educational value right there.
So following on from your magic, like if you had unlimited resources, how would you design the perfect learning environment?
It'd be 3 times the size I have. It'd be purpose-built. There's nothing wrong with my classroom. I love it. But I see other like new build schools and I'm like, I wish I had that much space. Yeah, it'd be much bigger. It'd have a self-cleaning carpet.
Is that a thing?
I've no idea, but you said unlimited, so we'll find one. We'll find one. Or like one of those hoovers that goes around by itself, like a robotic one. Not because the children are particularly dirty, but if they go outside in the mud, you get the mud on the floor, and then they sit on the mud, and then they've got it on them, or they squeeze the milk carton and it goes on the carpet, and there's 30 of them that you have.
So there's no fancy learning stuff. You just want like a nice, clean, big space.
I want a hygienic big space.
Okay.
There's lots of learning stuff I'd want, but having taught without, I'm by no means slumming it. Like, we have lovely stuff at school, but there's always something you could browse through the catalogue and buy. I don't always think the best learning things come from the stuff. I think it comes from the humans and the space that the humans are in. I'd have like an outdoor space that could be completely inside if you wanted to bring all the shutters down, which would obviously be beautiful bifold, non-breakable windows and a cover. But I keep the resources I have because I can do a lot with those, and I've learned to do a lot with those. But being able to have space that is sufficient for the children, not that it isn't sufficient, but, you know, luxuries, I would go for space over stuff.
That's interesting.
And self-cleaning as well.
And self-cleaning.
So have you got any book recommendations that help understand how kids learn best?
This is where I'm a naughty teacher. I hate reading for educational value. If I read, it's because it's for enjoyment. I've tried to read I'll read snippets of things, like short summarised journals, fine. But I actually hate reading that sort of thing. And I don't do it. I don't. I'll watch videos, I'll listen to podcasts. Not consistently. I will find one that someone recommends and I'll listen to one episode. Or I will discuss stuff in a networking kind of event, or I'll go to a talk. But I'm not a reader. Like, I am a reader. I can't focus to read something for an educational value. I couldn't do it at school. You know, I don't know how I have an A level in English literature. It's because I watched all the different adaptations of Wuthering Heights, like I said earlier. Don't tell my children that though.
Do you have any podcast or video recommendations then?
I think he was in one of the questions. Ken
Robinson.
His TED Talks, amazing. I listened to Not Another Teacher podcast, which touches on life as a teacher, but also kind of like the educational side of it and your workload and how you execute things. But I fall down rabbit holes on Instagram and TikTok and read articles that way as well. And I think when you've been teaching for a long time, or you've been submerged in it for a long time, there is a lot you do know. Someone could ask me a question and I have answers and I don't even realise I know this knowledge because it's second nature. But I've never been one to read for education reasons. But I'll listen and I'll watch and I'll read like snippets, but not a book.
It's fair enough. We did have a question for you on the Sir Ken Robinson TED Talk, Do Schools Kill Creativity? But talking to you and seeing your Instagram and everything like that, can't see how that would be.
I think your answer may be different if you were in a higher year.
Definitely.
If you were in a higher year, would you agree with his TED Talk that schools can kill creativity?
Some schools and some teachers. Again, I think this is down to individual schools. I think it's down to individual human teachers. In the art curriculum, you teach certain styles, but in the same way that you teach, there's poems and there's novels and there's fiction and non-fiction. You're teaching something that is an option, and therefore they may all produce a picture in the style of Monet or in a style of Picasso, but that's not because you want them all to do the same thing. It's because you're showing them options. So that's literal art, like fine art, like arty art. But then in terms of creativity, it's in most things because you're asking the children to produce something themselves. And I think it's far more common these days to respect that child in terms of like their own person and their imagination and their thoughts. So when you're asking them to write, you're telling them to expand on stuff, and you're not telling them what to write, you're telling them to keep going. So I do understand some schools and some teachers may make people feel that it's being killed, but I don't think when you get down to it as a core, that's what's doing it. I do think creativity is being stemmed because I don't think it's explored as freely as a pastime in a stereotypical light. But then who can say someone building a castle on Minecraft in an individual way isn't creativity? It might be screen time, it might not be a paintbrush or a pencil or a tree and a leaf, but it's still creative because they've produced that themselves.
I've seen some Minecraft things that kids have built, and when they apply their imagination to it as well, they're incredible. Like, I'd look at it as an adult and I'm like, it's a few blocks, and they're like, no, this is a farm, that's part of the farm, there's the house, the library's in there, these are all the books, those are the animals. And I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
I can see it now. But my adult brain kind of went, what,
Blocks.
just blocks. Cool, thank you. I think that resonates with some of the things you mentioned earlier about the ability for teachers to really have that influence on their class, and I guess the relative control they have over the creativity, the excitement, the socialization side of it.
Yeah.
So,
how would you approach teaching different age groups together?
I don't think it's about their biological age. I think it's about their academic age. I don't know if academic would be the right term even for like homeschooling, but it's a word I'd go to explain that. So there's lots of thoughts and feelings around setting children in ability and things like that. My personal thought is, from my own experience being in a bottom set or a lower set and being moved up to a set because I got the magic number, which meant I could move up. It was terrible. I was 13 and I've been in like more or less a low set for maths forever. Always. Maths was not my thing. Numbers didn't work on paper for me. Give me a calculator. I knew exactly how to use it and get the answer, but I could not do it with my own brain. I could do the right thing, but not get the right answer. And then, I don't know, 9 months before I sat my GCSEs, I reached the magic number. I moved up to the higher paper for the maths. And I failed my GCSE because of it. Because I was in a classroom where it was going quicker than I could cope with. I was in a classroom where other children understood to a different level to me, and the teacher wasn't teaching to what I understood and to my level. And I think we see that even with younger children. Like, that's, I can pinpoint, probably because the age, so I can remember it really clearly. The repercussion of it, I can remember really clearly. And then the impact afterwards when you find out you don't have GCSE in maths and you want to be a teacher. But, for example, we set for phonics. We give them, we don't tell them their sets, we call them groups. I get to share my class with the other teachers and let them have a chance to teach them. Is how they see it, because that's what we explain to them. You know, I don't want to be selfish. I'm going to let some of you go and, you know, I'm going to treat you. I'll let you all have a go with a different teacher. And then in a few weeks, you can try a new teacher. So they love it. They think they get, you know, and get rid of me for half hour. But when you do phonics as a whole class and you're trying to cover as much as possible for 30 children, all at very, very different levels, as you go through the stages, the ones that aren't there yet and aren't ready are drowning, are disengaged, and don't want to know, which is why you don't teach to the number of their biological age, you teach to their ability. So if you're in two different abilities, look at, if you're using the curriculum or whatever subject you're on, look at the parallels between them. It might be a case of you could teach the exact same thing. So for maths, for example, you could be teaching addition, and one person could be using 2-digit numbers and someone else could be using 3 or 4-digit numbers. You're still using the same principles. They can co-teach each other, the children, but they're working at two different levels. But at the same time, you can have a 10-year-old and a 5-year-old, and due to whatever reason, they're working at the same age, but they're just two different biological ages. So I look at academic age, not physical age, and I'd find the parallels to teach both. And even the younger student will have ways of teaching the older one because they will view things far differently due to their difference in knowledge and their outlook on things.
Oh, I like that. That's good.
Yeah, and it's useful for anybody who is home educating because quite often they'll have kids that, well, unless they've got twins, if they've got more than one kid, they'll have kids of different ages. So trying to make sure that you can cater for that is quite a tricky thing.
So I know you don't have children, but if you did have children and you home educated those theoretical children, how would you go about structuring your days/weeks?
I imagine it'd be very, very different to a person that wasn't a teacher, because my head would probably still be in teacher mode to an extent. Starting out, I know exactly, I know that I want them to be able to count to 10 and understand the makeup of 10, as in, the number 7 has 7 physical items in it, and that 7 would be made up of like 1 and 6, and all of that really intense, deep stuff. So I would have a focus on maths. I would have a focus on them loving to read as well as physically reading and technically reading. I'd probably be the sort of person that would need like homeschool groups, because I'd need some sort of community with it. But I think I'd probably put myself timetables together, because otherwise I wouldn't get anything done, because I get sidelined as it is. So the fact that I feel that I should be getting these children to learn anything at all, whether it's like curriculum or interest led, wouldn't happen. We'd all just be sat in the garden doing the same thing every day almost, or swinging from trees. There probably wouldn't be any progression if I didn't like put some structure in.
Brilliant.
Swinging from trees.
Cool. So the last one on our list, and I think I want to reword this one a little bit because of your passion for education and passion for school. Do you have any tips or advice for those who are thinking about home educating their children, or are at that crossroads where they're not quite sure whether they want to do traditional school or home education?
I think it's a very personal choice. I also think that schools shouldn't be given a blanket opinion on them. Every school is very, very different. If you're not sure, go and look at schools. I'd also say, as someone that works in a school, by all means go on open day that they've advertised. Also, ring them and ask to go and have a look on the day that's not open day, because that's when you'll see what the school's really like. Because you'll be walked through a school where they're not aware necessarily that someone's coming, and even if they've been told, they'll probably forget. We get told people are coming walking around the whole time, and I'm like, who's that down the corridor? Because I've got other things to remember, and that's not one of them. So you get a true picture of that. So if you're on the borderline, you want to have a look round, I'd do that. But I think as well, it's knowing what's best for you. And I don't feel like I'm in the position. Number one, I don't have my own children. Number two, I love school a lot and had positive experiences growing up. And I was a pretty average learner. I wasn't a brain box by any means, nor did I have any specific, like really specific needs. So I kind of cruised down the middle, and therefore I don't think I kind of would have needed much else than what I was exposed to and given. But I definitely think schools get a lot of bad press, and maybe some schools deserve it. I don't know. But I think if you're not sure, just go and have a look. I think Ofsted reports aren't always the best indicator, but they're put out there and people are directed to them for the good and the bad and the ugly. Like, they're there, but you've got a gut feeling. I'd also say if you're really, really on the borderline, sign them up and send them to reception, because if they hate it, you'll know about it. And if you don't think it's working for them, you'll know about it. And also, even if you feel that school could be for them, but not that school, reception is the best year group to change your child's school, in terms of, if it's the wrong place for them, move them, 100% move them. But in reception, it's literally their job to learn how to be in a school environment. And it's their job to get friends. They are the age where a brand new child walks into the classroom and you don't know they're a new child 2 seconds later, because everyone is their friend already. So if you're not sure, maybe try it. You can withdraw, you could go, this is for my kid, but this is not the right one. There's lots of different schools and lots of different setups and different focuses. And it's just working out whether it is or it isn't for you. And if it is for you, like going to school, what school your child needs. And if it's not for you, like working out how you need to do home ed.
Nice.
Thank you. I hadn't considered that, actually, like going and visiting a school not in open day type thing and doing things like that.
Go on open day by all means, because you'll probably get to sample like school meals and all that sort of thing, because I'll have it ready. But ring then and ask to go on a different day, like just a random day. Just go and have a look. That's the day you'll get the feeling.
That's a really good shout. Thank you very much. And I guess in line with that, is there anything else you wanted to mention while we have you on our show?
You have the space.
Yes.
I think I'd just say again, like, schools get a really bad rap at the moment, or some schools do. It's not all schools. No teacher is working in a school because they don't enjoy the job. Because trust me, a lot of teachers could probably earn the same, if not more, working in Aldi, because they could do overtime. Like, no one's in a school because they don't want to be there. It doesn't mean that it's the perfect workload for anybody, but we're there because we care and we enjoy our jobs most of the time. Like, but everyone has a bad day, and we're allowed to have bad days, whether you're working in a school or the police or supermarket. It's always tough getting up with the alarm. Literally, like, whatever you're doing, you don't want to get out of bed. You don't particularly want to go to work, but it's your job, and you're not working in a school unless you want to. So even if you're not wanting as much as you used to, maybe you're not going to stick it out for no reason. As bad a rap as some of them get, the humans in them are trying to do the best they can. So yeah, and everyone's human, and mistakes are made and things are said, and if we weren't working with children, we probably wouldn't get the hit as hard as we do.
That's probably true.
Yeah. But yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on our show.
That's all right.
Thank you very much for providing a bit of an opposite opinion than what we've had previously. It's been quite refreshing to hear.
Oh, I'm pleased.
Yeah. And your passion, like I've said, your passion for educating is really obvious, and I love so many of the things that you've talked about in terms of teacher magic and how you get kids interested, and the way that you were inspired to become a teacher as well. It's really lovely to hear those kinds of stories.
Oh,
and if anybody has enjoyed this and would like to see more of Poppy, then you can go to Instagram and find her at the Teacher with Pink Hair. There'll be a link below. She has so many cool videos. Go and check her out. So yeah, thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for being here, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.